Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leadership Rediscovered. This week, we are continuing the conversation with Dr. David Hess, who is the newly appointed President and CEO of WVU Medicine United Hospital Center. Well, one thing I was curious about, we're in an interesting time now where you're starting to hear a lot more about burnout across industries from COVID, but in healthcare in particular, I can't even imagine with, essential workers and, like you said, the staffing shortages, but just the very nature of what healthcare workers have been through for the past few years. Any tips, strategies, suggestions on how to start approaching kind of where we are in this journey, and especially as it relates to the well-being of employees and, things that we can maybe do to help get to a better place with that?
Yeah, so great question. We talk about this almost daily in healthcare. And I liken the situation to really what Army medics have gone through. When you go into healthcare, there's an assumption that you're going to be around some death and dying. It just happens, and we understand that. What we saw during COVID, though, were at the hospitals where I was leading and running, you would have 3 or 4 people an hour die on the same nurse. Wow. And again, so what we saw on the other side of that was almost a PTSD kind of feel
that would make
to
sense,
it.
Yeah.
And this emotional trauma that happened. So I was interviewed a couple of times, and I was most concerned about that for our long term. And now here we are. You're absolutely right. And that was me being strategic during that day and thinking about what are we going to have to deal with after COVID. Yeah. I know we have to staff today and we have to make sure we have enough nurses in the ER, but what are we going to have to deal with after COVID? And in my strategic part of the day, I kept thinking, I'm really worried about burnout. I'm really worried about these folks just doing a mic drop and say, I'm out of here because I cannot do it anymore. And what would happen is we would tease them. There would be a surge and then it would get better. And they're like, oh, thank goodness we're through this. And then guess what? We'd have another surge again. And they're like, I'm done. And then we'd lose 10 or 15 nurses. Wow. And then it would get better. And then everybody would kind of calm. And then we'd hit another surge and we'd lose more. So great question. The first thing that I tell all our leaders is just like with anything else, you have to own it. You have to be transparent and you have to say, guys, this is real. I get it. And I see it in you. We have to all just be honest with each other that we're going through this. And, I have VP level leaders that are going through burnout and COVID was top of mind and at 24/7, 365 for 2 years now. We have to be honest with each other that I personally have suffered from the burnout of COVID because you couldn't turn it off.
Yes.
There was something 24/7 coming at you, something new. And we have to be honest with each other. So when we all realize that we're in the same boats, and there may be different severity of it for people, but I've had a lot of people that say, wow, thank you for saying that. Thank you for being honest that you have it too.
Right.
And then I don't feel like I'm weak.
Like there's something wrong with me, or it's just me.
Yeah. Or I don't know what it is, but I just don't feel like I get the same pleasure out of my job that I used to. And physicians are going through this. We're concerned about them with all the computer time, the documentation that they have to do. So we've been focused on physician burnout and the potential for us to have a physician shortage. Now in the immediate, it's nursing, it's anybody bedside, it's respiratory therapists. And I think the best thing that we can do is we own it and we say, look, this is real. I'm experiencing it. You try to be a vulnerable leader. And you say, look, if anybody else is, let's talk about this. So we have an employee assistance program within the system that we refer some of our folks to make sure that, if you had a heart problem, I wouldn't just say, hey, I'll deal with it. I'd send you to the heart specialist.
Right.
So when you have a burnout problem, you almost have to peel back all the layers on each individual and really offer them truly professional help.
Yeah, resources.
And sometimes it's a therapist. Sometimes it's all the way up to a psychiatrist. Sometimes there's some underlying stuff that got uncovered through this very, very traumatic time that none of us had ever been through in healthcare, at least in our lifetime.
Right.
And so it's as serious as, is this only burnout that probably a therapist can get you through? Or is this uncovering something else that was brewing in there, a depression or an anxiety problem
Did it just ignite something
exactly
else?
COVID
Yeah.
exacerbated, or the trauma from it, the unknown of it, and I've had a lot of patients that were very isolated. We're very social creatures, and they went home and stayed by themselves. I had a patient that we were probably 6 months into COVID at that point, and she came in and saw me and said, "This is the first time I've seen another human being or been out of my house in 6 months."
Oh my gosh.
And I thought my heart broke for her. She was elderly, and I thought how isolating, and it was just so we've all been through this, but we all have to be honest and not act tough and tear the barrier down and say, look, we're all struggling here. We're all broken. We all have an ism of something. And we all need to help each other out, get through it. So, it's about, kind of asking and inquiring, hey, you seem down today. You okay? And, plugging people in and letting them know that that's okay, because we're all struggling through COVID.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know of one person that wasn't affected by COVID, whether it be isolation, whether it be just their change, whether it be a financial struggle. So in healthcare, we're just being very honest with each other, transparent with each other, and we're not putting any stigma on asking for help, and plugging them into somebody professionally to let them know that there's help out there.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think what I just respect and appreciate about you so much is that you are very much kind of, breaking stereotypes about what it is to be a CEO or what it is to be a physician. That, hey, I'm not saying just because I'm a whatever title that I'm not struggling with this
Absolutely.
too, and it's impacting me. I'm not, Teflon from all of this. I'm like you.
Right.
And that builds that connection right off the bat with someone and helps them to not feel so alone and isolated in that situation, which is really important.
Yeah, and they saw that, I had the credibility to run and help them out on the front lines and mask and gown up. So they know that you can be tough when you need to be. It's not like I hid back in an office and never came out and saw anybody and just said, yeah, I'm really affected too. They saw it in real time, and they knew that I was there. So, they knew that I had the toughness to make it through, but they also knew that I wasn't fake and acting like, oh, no, I'm fine. What's COVID? That's no big deal.
Talk about the numbers.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. You have to own it, and you have to ask all the time, is everybody doing okay? Is everybody checking on their coworkers? So, for those folks that equate, toughness with hiding and stuffing your emotional garbage bag full, as a physician, I would tell them, just be careful, because that comes out at some point.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's, you can only stuff that thing
That
full
bag can
so
only
much.
hold so
Exactly.
much.
So sometimes if you just, it's very therapeutic to sit down and say, it looks like you're struggling. I'm struggling too. What are you doing? Are you exercising? Are you meditating? Are you going through a counseling? What are you doing? And sometimes it's just to be heard and to connect with those people on that level. Sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah.
Just to have an outlet with somebody to say, what a great guy. He seems like he's really struggling too, but we're talking with each other at least.
Well, and it's someone that cares. And I think you're in an environment where you have a lot of people who care about other people. And so that adds, I think, to all of this emotional trauma that they genuinely care about their patients. And so this is not, a transactional process. There's a lot of heart involved in it. And so, that's that extra element or that extra layer of it to say, I'm not okay. This is not help. This is impacting me greatly.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Let's talk about your new role at UHC, because I'm very excited for you, like I said, coming back home. And, what does this mean? This role mean to you, mean for you? What are your hopes for the future with it?
Yeah. So this was one of those points that, again, all leaders probably go through, that, what does success mean to you as a leader, and what ultimate goals do you have? And for me, it was all about coming back home, and it was all about, it means the world to me, because, the first day that I went back into United Hospital Center, where my mom worked for probably 30 years, the volunteer at the front desk was an office worker at Lincoln High School.
Oh
She
my
was the
goodness.
assistant to the principal, Carol Gaynor, and just came up and hugged me. And
Aw.
that's when it hit home to me
Yeah.
that a lot of messages to unwrap there. But the message that we talked about in my bio, that a kid that grew up in Lumberport,
Mhm.
if I can do it, anybody can.
Mhm.
But the other message is, a lot of us have the opportunity to leave and go elsewhere. And, like my brother lives in the southernmost city of West Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina. He moved away
There's
a
a
long
lot of
time
West
ago.
Virginians in that
Yes,
town.
there are. Believe me, every time I go down and visit and I wear something West Virginia, they're like, "Hey, I'm from Beckley." And I don't fault those people for doing it, but the
Yeah.
message for the people that are here is that, find a way to stay and build in your community and work in your community and give back to the community. And I've been so blessed in my career to be helped by so many wonderful people. And, even the teachers back in high school and the people in the community, that what better way to come back and give back to the people that gave so much to me.
Yeah.
And, there's titles and there's monetary, but really when it comes down to it, it's running into those people at Walmart or Target and or a sporting event, and being able to say, I got you the best cardiologist I could find, and they're going to make your heart better. Or we've got great cancer doctors here, and they're going to get you through whatever. I mean, just being able to do that for the community, it means everything. I mean, I love doing it in the other communities where I worked, but getting the ability to come back and doing it in our community, I can't even put a price tag on that, and how much. It makes me want to be better for the next day. It's the most rewarding thing I could ever do in any role.
Well, and it's inspiring because it's really, coming to the point of this was the community that took care of you growing up, and now you're in a position to turn around and take care of the community, which I just think is so neat to see how it comes around.
No, that's what excited me the most when I had conversations with, Albert Wright, the CEO of the health system, what my long-term plan was. And, that could have gone a lot of different directions. And, I respected him as a leader and a mentor. He's a great visionary, great with people, and is very honest. And we try to take a little bit from everybody. And I know folks watching your show hopefully will take a little bit from everybody on here. Everybody that we've interacted with and the leaders we worked with, you try to take a little bit of what they do. And I think one of the things that I liked the most about Albert is what he said he was going to do, he would follow through with. And so there was that trust there that was just unwavering. And, a lot of that was about previous conversations about, what I would want my career path to look like. And it just always seemed like it was leading me back towards UHC. And I told him that the ultimate goal was when, the CEO retires, I would like to be considered for that job. And he stayed true to his word. And, I met with the board down there and ended up getting their vote of confidence as well, which was very humbling. But, that community, since I've left, has grown. And, they have a jewel of a hospital in that community. And I know that giving the keys to somebody new is something that they take very seriously. And I know there's a lot of responsibility with that, but I think at the end of the day, just getting up and being able to give back to the community, that again, that so many people gave me rides to sporting events and baseball practices and paid for my lunch at certain places. It's just that's immeasurable, the amount of satisfaction and gratification you get from going back and helping them.
Yeah. Going for strategic just for a moment.
Yeah.
If you kind of fast forward, of course, I never want you to leave that hospital, but thinking about if you transition somewhere after that, what would you want your legacy to be for your time at UHC?
I love that you ask about legacy, because I talk about legacy a lot. So my legacy at UHC, I want to, the long-term effect there and the culture is always putting the patient and the community first. So, as a physician and that leads a healthcare organization, you can't measure what it means for people to walk into a building and they're scared to death, whether it's they're getting a test or having a surgery, for somebody to be met with warmth and kindness and compassion. And are you looking for someplace? Let me show you where that is.
Yeah.
And that can be anybody. That can be the volunteer at the front desk. That can be, one of the folks that work in environmental services. That can be, we have a painter there that's very talkative and stopped me in the hall. We had a great conversation the other day. It can be that person. And I remember, my mom, who was a nurse and had worked at 8 different hospitals, and she came to one of my hospitals one time and said, this hospital has a warmth that I've not felt in many other hospitals. And it ended up, I said, well, who really stood out there? And it was one of our environmental service workers there.
Wow.
Yes. And then again, in true typical West Virginia fashion, fast forward, and this environmental service person used to always talk about her son, Matt. And I've reconnected with Matt and found out that he's running our operating room at United Hospital Center.
No way.
And he's got the best DNA that I could ever, because this person out-hustled everybody, but did it in such a way that she constantly made an impact. Every room that she would go into, she had something kind and just perfect to say to that patient, to put their mind at ease, to calm them down. My mom happened to be one of them, and she said, no, it was Young that came in, and she was fantastic. She was just the best person ever. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that connection too, because you're talking about 2 different areas within West Virginia, and the connection there.
And again, the other leadership, kind of pearl there is that you never know. Always be kind and compassionate on the way up. And, I can give you so many stories in my career where somebody said, oh, that Dave Hess, you'll like him. And it was somebody that I worked with early on in my career and really respected and would ask for input and just treated them the right way. Yeah. And then, it comes full circle.
It absolutely does.
Always.
And regardless of where you go, I remember, I think I was in high school and they brought in a motivational speaker, but I remember the message was, when you're climbing up the top, it gets pretty steep up there. And are you going to have a safety net of people if you fall who will be there to catch you, or are you just going to come crashing down? And it was all about, how do you treat people regardless of where you go and what your definition of success is? Do you have that safety net behind you, which I think I have not heard anyone say anything but amazing things about you, which was one of the reasons. I
appreciate that.
Yeah, I was so excited to talk to you because again, you do have already a reputation and a legacy that you've built even in this area. And so I think you're just going to be able to come in and, keep going with it, which is exciting.
Yeah. One of my favorite movies, for whatever reason, I like sports, but you and I had talked about, one of my favorite movies is Moneyball. Yeah. And in Moneyball, the character who's an analyst and really isn't much of a business person per se. But he figured out a way to win that nobody else was paying attention to. And I'm not saying in hospital that nobody's paying attention to it, but I remember my first meeting as a CEO, my leadership meeting, I played a clip from Moneyball and said, I've figured out how to win in medicine. And it goes back to, we were in financial trouble and I was trying to get people to trust me.
Right. And,
the secret sauce in medicine is that, and it goes back to the adage, people will always remember how you make them feel.
Yes.
Right? So that's any business.
Not necessarily even what you say about how you make them feel. Yep.
Right. So especially in healthcare. So especially when you're at your worst or at your most fearful, you've got that bad, reading on a mammogram or whatever, and you're coming back in for a follow-up. People always remember how you make them feel. So if we create an organization, we create a hospital, we create a health system that makes people feel a certain way and makes people feel respected, makes people feel welcomed and comforted, we win. And they really bought into that. I said, look, we're not the New York Yankees because, again, that hospital is financially struggling.
Right.
And we're the Oakland Athletics. In that movie, the Oakland Athletics didn't have any money and they had to make a team out of people that just had good value. And so, the Jonah Hill character found people with good value. And the people with good value in any business, really, but certainly in healthcare, are the ones that can really create that positive emotion in
Yep.
people and make them feel warm and comforted. And that's how that hospital truly pulled out of financial disarray. Was we started grabbing market share in a very competitive market in northern West Virginia. There were 5 hospitals in a 35-mile radius when I started.
Wow.
People started coming to our hospital because they felt that warmth. They felt that welcoming. They said, wow, people there are so nice, and it's easy to
Yeah.
get in and out. And so then what happens is like people attract like people,
Yeah.
right? So then people are like, hey, I want to go down there and work because those people
Mm-hmm.
seem happy. It was because we were recruiting those people that say, this person gets it.
That's
I want to
amazing.
I want to work in that organization that treat people the right way and respect people. And
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, you want to lay your head on the pillow and say, I did the best I could for whether it's your customer, whether it's your patient. And I think
Yes.
the people that at our organization do feel that way.
Wow. And not that I want to go to the hospital
Yes,
anywhere,
please don't.
but if
No.
I did, that's the kind of hospital I
Right.
want to go to,
Right.
because that's, really feeling taken care of
It
in
is.
all the ways.
It is. It is.
Amazing. So I think what's so interesting to me about you is that you have a really great balance of kind of the head and the heart.
Mhm.
And I'm curious about, to me, that makes you a very successful leader. So I would
Mhm.
love to hear your thoughts and advice for other leaders, what pearls of wisdom that you would share in addition to what you've shared so far, but anything that we've kind of maybe not touched upon yet that you feel like has led to your success that you could share with
Yeah.
others.
So, again, I've not seen this anywhere in leadership. So I know you've asked other folks what their definition of leadership
Yeah.
is. Mine's a little different. Not much, but it's a little different. And, I think it speaks to the head and the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it also speaks to, I think, my background as a physician. A lot of people think the best physician is the person that gives the right medicine or gives, but my definition of a physician and kind of it rolls into a leader is, my definition of leadership is making people better.
Mm.
So then you're like, what is that? And it can have 17 different layers, but it's
Right.
the same way with a physician. Sometimes making people better isn't curing them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just listening to people. Sometimes it's letting them feel heard. Sometimes it's getting them through a tough time. Sometimes it is giving them medicine. So for leadership, it's about making people better around you. So that's not a title thing. That's not
Right.
So everybody can be a leader. And I know Jim Matuga, one of our mutual friends, talks a lot about leading yourself.
Yes.
So it is about making yourself better too when you're leading yourself. But so when people ask me who one of the best leaders are of our time, I surprise them many times. And it goes along with a lot of my sports analogies, in that Michael Jordan was one of the best leaders in our time.
Ooh, I
So
like
think about it. So we
that.
have these conversations all the time. Who was the best NBA player? The reason I think Michael Jordan was an incredible leader, and Tom Brady's kind of the same way,
Mhm.
is that they make everybody around them better by being on the field, on the court with them. And maybe that's leading by example. Maybe that's motivating them. Maybe that's inspiring them. I always say that, average leaders can tell people what to do, and good leaders can motivate people what to do, but great leaders inspire people on what to do. And I think that's when you look at some of the folks that I think are truly great leaders, they're always making people around them better.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's investing in people. A lot of
Yes.
times that's pausing and stopping and saying, "Are you okay?" So it's I get that there's people that feel like it's influence or so it does bleed over a little bit
Sure.
into, but just kind of a generic definition of leadership that I have is just making people better.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people can be leaders, and a lot of people can make people better, but it's also interesting that there's not a success label on that either. So it's not like it's not an if-then statement, and the end result doesn't always have to be success.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be a great leader and things don't work out, but you still are making people better around you or making yourself better. So pearls of wisdom. As I think about it, there's a leadership part to it. There's kind of an entrepreneurial part. Sometimes, we get, I talk a lot about being transparent. I think we get frozen a little bit in appearances and how leaders are supposed to appear, or, so I would say be open and honest and transparent, like we talked a lot about. And with that is getting started, because I see a lot of leaders that are frozen in how something's going to come across, or how they need to present it, or do they need to do a PowerPoint for this meeting? And I say, look, just get going, jump in and get it started. And you can massage and change your message or your product as you go. Now, that doesn't mean don't do your homework and do something sloppy, but I do
don't
see
get into that analysis paralysis.
Yeah,
you don't do
exactly.
anything.
And that's what I say a lot, is that you're kind of frozen in sometimes, to your point before, people want you to be honest, and they want to know where they stand and everything. And sometimes in the absence of no knowledge, they're going to put something in there and assume the worst.
I was going to say, it's never better than what their real story is.
Exactly. So, a lot of leaders are like, okay, I'm going to set a meeting every hour, every 2 weeks with this group. And I'm like, but you're missing that daily interaction that you need to be a leader too. So you don't have to have a formal meeting a lot of times. Maybe it's a quick huddle, and maybe, and I think we get too caught up with, things having to happen a certain way, and sometimes it's, they read a certain leadership book and they think, no, this person recommends that every 2 hours I bring everybody in a room and we all sit around and we each take our turn and we talk, and I say, no, you'll develop your own style. And sometimes you pivot a little bit, and sometimes you'll change it. And I've done that a lot in my career. And but just get going on it, because that way too, they see you struggle a little bit and you don't get it perfect. And I think that's another great message to everybody, is that I'm not perfect and I'm going to struggle, but we're in it together, and I'm going to take your feedback on how to make it better. So it's kind of like with the entrepreneurs, when you got an idea, sometimes you just got to jump in and get started a little bit. And maybe I'm faulted for jumping in too quickly, too much. I want to get going, and not do my due diligence enough. But I surround myself with people that are those critical thinkers, and the folks that do a lot of due diligence, and they're the hesitant, wait for a second, let me get you there. So again, another pearl is, if you are one person out, you got to surround yourself with people that aren't like you exactly, and certainly that won't say yes to everything, but surrounding yourself around that table with people of different backgrounds and certainly different leadership styles.
Ooh, that's big, because I have seen a lot of times leaders do end up surrounding themselves with people who are either like them or won't challenge them. And they may even say, I want you to tell me if you disagree.
Absolutely.
And, but don't really mean it. And it can be hard, because if you surround yourself with people who maybe aren't like you, they can sometimes be a little more challenging to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be told, sure, your idea's great. Let's run with it. Instead
sounded just like my idea, I was going to say.
Perfect. Let's go do it. And, and not hold you back, or not tell you no, but at the same time, are you really being challenged, and are you really getting to the best result in the end if you are surrounding yourself with those kind of people? But that takes, I think, a good bit of humility, and being able to kind of and we all have ego, but putting our ego in check to say, you know what? I may not have all of the answers here, but I'm going to surround myself with, a team of people where we can work together to come up with that.
No, I think, Simon Sinek talks a lot about trust in an organization and creating trust. And I think it comes down to that. Yeah. That, you've created a culture where they can speak up, and you're actually going to listen, like you said, and not just say, but you've got to trust each other and trust the organization and trust the leadership team or whatever team you're on to work through it, be honest, never make it personal, make it about ideas and products. And, I think that, if anything, I've probably been guilty of letting those awkward, difficult moments last a little bit too long in meetings, because I want to see where it goes. I think
it's smart. I don't think you let it go too long.
And it's tough, because everybody's looking at me like, shut this down now, because it really gets them out of their comfort zone. Yeah. And then I just let this awkward, dramatic pause happen. And what I'm doing is allowing maybe it's the two people that have differing opinions, come to some commonality or make a statement about the other person that, the old adage, we need to really listen to hear people, not just to respond and reply. It's to allow them to think about what the other person said, and not just me say, okay, well, let's put that on for another meeting, and we'll do a one-off on that one in a sidebar. It's letting that get played out and work, because you got to create the trust in an organization to say, okay, you two are going to differ, and I'm not going to shut it down.
No.
Because I value what you're both saying, and it's not that either of you are wrong. It's just that we need to have a compromise or whatever. And but that's really, really tough.
It is.
To let those awkward conversations where somebody's under somebody else's skin, and as long as they keep it professional, allowing that static to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's the growth in the organization.
Yes, that when you're pushing people out of their comfort zone, that's when they grow and that's when they learn.
And the organization does, because it's not that just, one-minded, it's all going to flow
Think
right.
tank.
Yeah, right. It's all going to be in the middle of the fairway, and we're all just going to have these very vanilla ideas that nobody else challenged each other. And, it's tough. And a lot of times there's the finance folks in on it, and we know this is the best thing to do, but we can't afford it, or how are we going to afford it? And you got to let those things play out, because if you jump in too soon, right, then you cut somebody off, or you cut the compromise out, or you cut that solution that may be there between both of them. And so I think that, I don't know if it's because, I've been in a lot of difficult and awkward conversations as a physician, that I'm okay letting that play out a little bit. Yeah, I was curious,
how do you do that? Because especially if you are more of an action-oriented, let's go kind of guy, that's got to be hard for you personally, just kind of hold
it is.
back.
It's that intentional piece again.
Yeah.
Where I want to jump in and say, I know how to fix this.
Yeah.
But you can't, because your team needs this to happen.
Yeah.
It's been brewing for a while or whatever.
Yeah.
And you knew this point was coming, and you kind of knew which way you were leaning, but for the team to grow and overcome some of the barriers that they've had up, or that they've been siloed off on, and you're trying to connect them and build that bridge. This needs to happen. This conversation has been needing to happen for a while.
Yes.
This person's going this way, this person's mad at them, and they're going the other way, and this, and to let that play out when you're that jump on it person is very difficult. But literally the voice in my head is telling me, don't say anything. Let this play out. And it's really, really hard.
It is hard.
Because everybody's looking at you like you're the final say. You're the judge.
Step in.
You slam the gavel and make it happen right now.
They're wrong. And
exactly.
I'm right.
Exactly. And it's not, and I always tell, it's not about somebody being right or wrong, but that's just that human nature of it. Is that I am so right. I can't believe everybody else in this room can't see it, especially the CEO. Tell him to end this right now. But again, so many other great things are happening there that are allowing them to work through those situations, that I just want to see how they play out.
Wow. And there's so much learning that's happening.
Absolutely.
Because you're giving that space for people to start listening to, even if they're not the two that are engaged. I'm sure there's other people in the room that are watching, you know, like with popcorn.
Oh, yeah.
What's going to happen next?
Glad it's not me.
Exactly. But they're getting to learn from someone else's perspective, or even just their thought process on how they approach things.
Yeah. No, you always are learning. I mean, again, we go back to this lifelong yearning for learning. I mean, every meeting that we have, I tell everybody, we got to make sure we're learning from each other, or from somebody else's style, or how they're doing something, or how they presented their Excel spreadsheet. I mean, we should always be taking away something from everything. But for your organization to continuously grow and allow those conversations to happen is really, really hard. And again, especially when we're all under a time crunch, it's hard to let some of those conversations play out, because you just want to end them and say, we got to move on. We got other stuff to do. But, again, investing in your people and trying to make your people better every day, those things have to happen. Because again, a lot of times I'll pull by after the side and say, I want you to understand, I recognize how awkward that was, but I've just seen some of the tension going on between you and John, and I just felt like that needed to play out. You needed to say your piece, he needed to say his piece. Then we come together as a leadership team and we move forward. And now hopefully that can be in the rear view and you guys can work together. And, you know, and a lot of times I never saw it that way, you know, until John, you know, raised his voice and said, I'm under intense time crunches over here. You know, he never thought about it that way. And you're like, boy, I'm glad that worked out. Yeah. Sometimes they do. And you know, and you're better for it moving forward. But, you know, that's something that I don't know why I don't know that I enjoy them, but I'm okay with those happening. Yeah. And I think it's just because, you know, I've had so many difficult conversations, you know, in my life that, you know, that everybody are like, whew, boy, that was bad. And I'm like, that was not one of the worst ones I've had this week. Yeah.
I've had worse. But I think you're probably, you know, you've gotten a benefit or a payoff from it. You know,
absolutely.
There's a reward in it, and you know what it is. Even if they can't see it at the time, they're getting a benefit from it too.
Absolutely.
Although I do have to ask about, when I think about learning, I think a lot of times about mistakes and failure. And I think in a healthcare setting, that's a very different context.
It is.
Know, when I used to do payroll and I'd mess something up, you know, the CFO would be like, that's okay, you're not a neurosurgeon.
Right,
you know,
right.
That the bad's going to happen here.
Right.
We'll fix that. You know, the amount of pressure, I would assume, people in a healthcare setting put on themselves around mistakes. I mean, how does that show up in terms of encouraging learning, but also recognizing sometimes not all mistakes, but you know, sometimes there can be quite a cost with a mistake.
Absolutely.
So how does that show up in your environment?
It's different than anywhere else, and it goes back to that culture of trust. Yeah. And you know, I think the ability for us to I think that all plays into burnout, because you're right. We're under an intense pressure now to have what we call zero harm events, meaning that we have to be perfect, and we're striving towards perfection. Yeah. And I know a lot of people say that they're, you know, we want to be perfect, but in healthcare, you're right. It means different. It means that anything preventable or anything that you could have done, we have to get right 100% of the time. And I think the burden and the mental stress and anguish that's accompanying that does, again, play into this burnout and does play into the challenge that we have keeping a mentally and physically healthy workforce. So how we handle it is that we constantly educate our staff about, you know, what are the goals. When we talk about we want to have zero harm events, what does that mean? We want to make sure that nobody gets a blood clot laying in bed. We want to make sure that nobody gets a pressure ulcer from laying in bed too much. You know, you got to make sure you identify the goals so we're all speaking the same language, going back to an earlier point. So we communicate the goals and make sure everybody knows what they are. And then, you know, again, we try to be as transparent as we can with each other about, you know, we understand that everybody's human, and it you know, we're just like leadership, we're on this journey to try to get to perfection and zero harm. But there is this overwhelming specter of the medical legal piece to it. Yeah. And we used to think that, you know, the hospital would be the only one on the hook. And then a recent case at Vanderbilt blew that out of the water, where a nurse actually got convicted for a harm event. So there's a lot of details in that case that are probably not like all the other typical issues that happen in a hospital, but it's top of mind for every healthcare worker. Absolutely. That you have to be perfect and you don't want to mess up. Because again, it would be like, you know, every childhood dream, whether it would be getting to go on a rocket ship, getting to play in a Super Bowl, right before you walk out of the tunnel to go on a football field, or right as you're going up to the ramp to fly in the rocket ship, somebody saying, no, you can't do that anymore. Yeah. A lot of these nurses and a lot of these, their lifelong passion is they all have servant hearts and they want to help others. And then all of a sudden they think that what they were put on the earth to do, they screwed up and caused harm to somebody. And it's devastating emotionally and mentally for them. So, you know, we have to be very cognizant of the pressure that they're under,
Right.
And what we end up doing is we end up helping them with technology guardrails around them, and we create ways that these medication errors won't happen.
Yeah.
You know, they have to get an override to do certain things. They have to grab a buddy and double check them on other things. So we understand that people are human and people get
Absolutely.
tired and people transpose numbers and
Yeah.
but I think that's one way that when we make this major investment in technology, we do try to protect our employees, because we know not everybody's perfect.
Sure.
But if you're having a bad moment or a bad day and you go to punch in a medication, it's going to say, wait, are you sure you want it? And they're going to be like, yeah, I'm sure I want it. And it's going to say, are you really, really sure you want it? And you go get your friend, so she has to
Double
verify that
check.
that's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what our organization has been good at, putting these double check systems
great.
and these safety nets in place so that it all doesn't fall on them. And I think that's the greatest thing about technology is, like anything, it's great when it's working well.
Yeah.
And especially in healthcare, we've made such a major, major investment in the technology piece. And that's not just so patients can get their labs on their phone. It's so that our nurses and employees can work in a safe environment, that they know there's some safeguards there so they don't make these mistakes.
That's amazing. And again, it feels like they have more support, that they're just
absolutely.
not on their own trying to be perfect when we all know it's not realistic.
Right.
You need to expect that.
And that's been our message after this case happened at Vanderbilt. We had a lot of people that said, hey, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know, the message is, you know, when we put these new technological advances in place, is to protect you. And it's because we're investing this money to protect you. And sometimes it's a hassle because, you know, you get a seasoned veteran nurse that say, yes, I definitely want this medicine. They got to do it 2 or 3 times. But it's really to protect everybody, because not everybody's that seasoned veteran.
Right.
You know, we've got a lot of new people that have entered the workforce, and maybe they don't know that. So we've got to put it in place for everybody and put the safeguards in place. But I think we do a good job at that. And we message to them that, look, this is for you. This is for your benefit. This is for your protection. We get it. Sometimes it's an extra step. But at the end of the day, you're going to feel safe that we value you enough to put these safeguards in place and make this investment.
Wow, and you're explaining the why to them, and it's not just about here's how we're trying to protect
Yes.
ourselves.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
we're looking out for you.
You got to lead with the why, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Always.
Love that.
Yes.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that since you are a physician, you know, I'm always curious about wellness as it relates to being in a leadership role. And so, you know, I would love to hear your perspective, thoughts on what leaders can do to keep themselves in a better state of well-being so that they can be fit to serve for others.
And that's hard because you're always wanting to do for others. You're always wanting to give. And again, we only have so much of that that we can do. And you know, if you're emptying your emotional glass during the day for everybody else, there's nothing left for you. There's nothing left for your family. It's very difficult. And again, we're all on that journey. You know, I can't say that I'm perfect. What I do like to do, though, is with our leaders, you know, there's none of that, you know, what I call PTO guilt. You know, and honestly, I love that as a system, we've kind of embraced what we kind of call mental health days. And, you know, we know that, you know, leadership is 24/7, 365 job. But we also know that that's not sustainable long term if you want to be a good or a great leader. So, you know, I'm always checking in with my leadership team and you know, encourage them to take a long weekend or some time off and to really find something outside of work that really, you know, drives them to decompress and, you know, get rid of some of the emotional garbage that has built up during the week. For myself personally, I think, you know, for my bio, it's finding those outside things and making sure I commit to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, for a while I was in a band, and then unfortunately, you know, life happens and I had to, you know, kind of get out of the band a little bit. But for me, you know, it's family and kids and sports and exercise, and you just got to make an intentional commitment to make sure that you're feeling fulfilled outside of work.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, it's you know, making sure that, you know, I take a Friday off every now and then and get a long weekend in, spend it with the family, and you know, try to be as physically active as you possibly can during all that, and making sure you commit some time to that. And and honestly, it's in your off time, it's surrounding yourself with people that fill your cup up, and however that is. It's funny, and we all probably do it in our younger days, but I still run into people in leadership roles that, hey, how was your weekend? Oh boy, I'm still tired. We were out till 4 a.m. and I ran into this guy, and and I'm like, okay, and I worry about people that don't have people that are filling them up on the weekends or when they're not at work and stealing from their emotional cup. And again, I don't involve myself in that, but I just always make sure that the work drains a lot of your emotional cup.
Yes.
And I just always make sure when I'm outside of work that, I want to still fill other people's cup up, but you want to make sure that you're not having a bunch of people there that really drain from your emotional cup.
Absolutely. Or, you want to look for healthy outlets,
absolutely.
not, unhealthy, which there's many
right.
options there.
Many options. Many options.
Too many options.
Yes. We've all been there. Yeah. But it's it's that sustaining healthy options outside of work. Is important for me to focus on and make sure my team knows that it's okay. Yeah. And I think setting that tone and that culture of, hey, I'm happy that you're taking this Friday off. I'm happy that you're taking that Monday off, because we have been going really, really hard. And take that time off for yourself.
Well, and that's leading by example too, in terms of acknowledging that and then doing it yourself as well.
Yeah.
Wow, you have been very gracious with your time.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it.
I appreciate being here. This has been wonderful. You're fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
You have a great way of drawing out the best out of people. Love your video podcast. We'll continue to watch them.
Yes.
And I'm happy to have been asked to come.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything we've left on the table that we didn't cover that you want to get out there?
No, you're fantastic, and keep up the great work with what you're doing.
You too. I'm very excited. We're going to, if you will, I know I took a lot of time today, but we can get you back later
would love
once
that.
You've been settled into your new role and hear how it's going, because I
would
think
love
that would be really cool.
Would love that.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, can we do the lightning round before
I would be, yes. If I got left out of the lightning round, I would be upset. I love the lightning round.
I can't not do the lightning round.
Love the lightning round. It's a little, I'm like Jim. I'm a little nervous,
Everybody gets nervous about the lightning round. Okay. All right. 1 minute.
Okay.
It's a standard questions. 1 minute to answer as many as you can. Okay.
Yes.
On your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality?
Fall.
Okay. What's your most used emoji in text?
Smiley face.
Okay. What book, song, movie, podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Let me say, I got to go Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars guy.
Star Wars.
Nerd.
I think you'll get a lot of fans out of that. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That I was a lead singer in a band.
Yeah, I love that. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on...
spend too much money on probably food and eating out.
Same. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
I think Matthew McConaughey would make a good
option.
one. Yeah.
Good option. All right. Favorite room in your house?
Favorite room is probably our family room.
Yeah. Good one. Okay. If you catch me by the fridge at night, I'm probably sneaking what?
Probably a Diet Dr. Pepper.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. You made it the farthest.
I know. I'm excited.
You were practicing,
I was
right?
like, those guys have to move a little bit. And I got hung up on, I didn't practice the questions, but I got hung up on one, and I wanted to get as many as possible.
I know you got that competitive streak.
I know, yeah.
This does not surprise me at all.
Right. It's been a joy to be here. Thank you so much.
I
really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll have you back.
Please do. I love it.
Very good. That's all the time we have today, folks. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.